Professor MAKAU is the spokesman of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya party, and he's here with us this morning. No stranger to the room. We're glad to have you every time. Good morning.
Thank you for having me. This is my favorite spot in town.
Well, there you go.
In the early mornings.
Simple water drunk amongst friends.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
You are in the hot seat this morning, though, Prof.
What hot seat?
The one that you sit in this moment.
It's the seat itself is hot.
Right. So, I mean, Kenyans have questions, and so, I mean, just getting right into it. Before we do that, welcome again to our audience on KTN Home. Glad to be with you as we continue into this conversation. Prof, just getting, no Band-Aid, ripping it off. We saw the statement that came yesterday from the Azimio camp, that you will not, or that your candidate will not attend the presidential debate. And the one question is why?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for having me once again. My distinguished colleague to the right. He has a piercing look, denoting an intellectual. And of course, the guest host here. Thank you so much. I think that you read the statement that we issued. I would like to underline one basic fact, and that is that we are running to win an election. But we are not simply running to win an election. We are running to transform this country. And I've said before, and I'll say it again, that the way you run a campaign is the way you're going to govern. The principles that guide you, the moral guardrails that are available to you as a campaign should be transferred to governance once you win an election. And so you cannot start your campaign on the wrong foot. You cannot campaign without basic predicates or morality. I just want to say that one thing that this country has done for the longest time, in fact, is to normalize political skullduggery and political immorality. We have normalized theft. We have normalized corruption. We elect thugs into public office. And then we wonder why this country is on the verge of becoming a failed state. We think that the national podium for an election should be a place that is sacred. As you speak to Kenyans to seek their votes, that platform has to be sacred. Okay? No one should desecrate that podium. But when our institutions of law enforcement, our electoral institutions, fail, it behooves those who stand on a moral platform to say no. And so we decided that we could not countenance affording our main opponent, Mr. Ruto, a platform to continue his lies. We feel very strongly that he does not have the moral standing to stand on the same platform with the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. CT, you remember that there is something called lustration. Lustration is a term in law and in transitional justice, and it speaks about the banning of a moral and legal wrongdoer from ever holding public office for heinous offenses and crimes. Personally, we feel that Mr. Ruto should never have been cleared to run for office.
Why?
In no civilized country would a person of his character, conduct, and history be given that platform. I think I've said before on this program, and I'm saying it again openly, Mr. Ruto is a person who has been credibly mentioned in so many acts of wrongdoing, most of them criminal. If he was in a law-abiding country where the rule of law meant something, he would be rotting behind bars. But yet, here he is, running for office and threatening to take off the State House.
Prof,
we do not intend to help him in that quest.
Okay, with this which you've said so far, so with the things that you have said, it's not the first time that you've said, it's not the first time that we've heard this coming out from the campaign.
Yes.
You know, of course, towards your opponent. Many would say, granted, that the other side of the divide as well would have many things to say about Raila Odinga as a candidate. But here we are talking about a presidential debate, which then gives an opportunity to Kenyans to hear last mile what their candidate essentially would do, that would then be able to convince the undecided, that then would give you an opportunity to say on a national platform where everybody's watching at the same time.
I think that you make, as always, good points. But let me remind you that a presidential debate is a minuscule event in the course of a campaign. A minuscule event.
But Prof, you're contradicting yourself, because at the start you had said that this platform is very sacred. We cannot share it with this gentleman. We cannot allow him to abuse it. But now you're again starting to reduce it to a minuscule event in a campaign.
No, because you didn't let me finish my point.
Okay.
If you did, you might hug me for making the point for you. It's a minuscule event. It's a 90-minute event. That's what I meant. The campaign has been conducted over the course of months. In fact, a year, I would say. There are many platforms where citizens can and do listen to candidates in campaign rallies, the launch of the manifesto, the declaration of the candidates themselves. So there are many events. Kenyans have heard us. What I'm saying is that a presidential debate is a platform where candidates stand on the same stage at the same time, facing each other. Okay? I'm saying that that kind of platform is sacred and should not be given to a criminal.
But you know, Prof, the problem with your argument is that you've passed judgment, you've convicted, tried and passed judgment on this gentleman. Shouldn't you allow Kenyans to be the ones to pass that judgment? Because as a campaign team, you are saying you do not want to share a platform with your opponent on the other side, and by so doing, you are denying Kenyans the opportunity to see your candidate go head on head with this other person, where then where your candidate can say, look, this is a lie. Here he's lying, and then he's lying again, and then he's lying again. But you are denying Kenyans that opportunity to be able to listen to that.
If I may ask, we've had campaigns for quite some time.
Yes.
The deputy president began his campaigning ahead of everybody else. But let's talk about the period when everybody else has been campaigning. So if we were to sum up the total conversations that have been heard in these campaigns, how then would a single debate somehow either negate or forward this argument when we've had an opportunity to see these candidates full view every single day? We've heard them literally every single day. One debate, 90 minutes. What is this new thing that is going to be said that hasn't been said in these campaigns?
You know, that question is valid, that there's not much that may be said in that moment. But debates provide more than anything to be said. It allows my mother in the village to be able to listen to both candidates at the same time and say, okay, this one makes a more reasonable argument than the other one. Or this one here is making a valid point than the other. No, this one knows what he's talking about here. This one does not know. It's not a question of what new thing are they going to say. In fact, I hold the opinion that probably those debates don't move a needle at all towards the election. They only allow us to be able to interrogate and see the characters of these people. That's what the debates do.
Well, let me ask you a question as I don my Raila Odinga presidential campaign hat. Let me ask you.
We can't see your face anymore, Prof.
Okay, can you see my face now? Let me say this. You're not going to dictate what I'm going to wear, right? I mean, you are a liberal individual. So if there's one person in the village who have not made up their minds at this point in the campaign, they probably will not make up their minds. So I don't think that we are waiting for the two candidates to debate with each other so that they can make up their minds. I think as CT said, and I agree with him completely, there's wall-to-wall coverage of the candidates by our national media institutions. Wall-to-wall coverage, often live. People expressing themselves. Someone like, Mr. Ruto has been in public life for the last 25 years. There's not much about him that we do not know, okay? There are many, if you will, books that can be written on the man and that are written in our minds, okay? Mr. Odinga has been in public life even longer. Kenyans know him. Kenyans know the difference between these two candidates. Don't forget also that the debate is a recent invention. I think the first debates were conducted in the United States in the late 50s and early 60s. Mm-hmm. It's a recent thing. So let us not elevate the debate to that pedestal. The only thing I'm trying to say is that it's a sacred space only because you do not want to give an individual, who is of that character, an opportunity to stand side by side with someone that he should not be standing side by side.
Professor?
And I should say, that, let me just say this, I should say that, when our institutions of law enforcement, when our criminal justice system fails, it does not mean that all of us as citizens must fail. If they don't do their job, we will do our job, okay? You've seen in the last, several months, in fact, I should say last several weeks, individuals who should never have been cleared to stand for public office, been cleared. Case in point, Mr. Songo. Case in point, Mr. Sakaja Johnson. The list is long, and it's a list of ignominy. A list that makes your stomach retch. You want to puke when you see that list.
Can I quickly jump in and ask you a question? That you've mentioned Sonko, for example, but unfortunately it seemed as though he was welcomed back into the fold by your principals just a few days ago. But then how can we then say he's welcomed on one hand and then come and say later that we're not going to accept this if we're saying it's the same ilk from the allegations that you make
I think,
of William Ruto? How do we play on one side and then play on the other?
No, we're not. I think that the starting point really is what the IEBC did or did not do. That's the starting point, okay? What our law enforcement agencies did or did not do. These people will never have left the gate to go to contest for elections.
So then it's okay to welcome them if they've left
No,
the
it
gate
is
then?
not. It is not. But let me just say this. We have to clean up our political space. We have to do that. I often say this, and I don't think I've said this before. A country, a nation, a state is like a person. Okay, it's like a person. It has a soul. Okay, a country has a soul. And if you corrupt that soul and you do not stop that corruption, the country will go to hell. In the case of a state like ours, Kenya, our soul is found in the Constitution and the laws of this country. That is the bed of morality on which we sit. But those values that are inscribed in the Constitution should also be inscribed in our hearts, in the hearts of our leaders and in the hearts of our common citizens. When we do not inscribe those values in our hearts, when we act with impunity, we evacuate our soul from this country, okay, and we create a climate of impunity, which I'm sure we have in this country. Okay. We have to start somewhere. And I'm saying to you and to Kenyans that we decided that we could not abide this particular character. Yeah.
You know, the statement that you make gives me the impression that Azimio are running on a moral platform. Is that what you're doing?
Azimio is running on a moral platform, and if we were not running on a moral platform, City, we would not run.
See, then I have a little problem with that, because
Okay.
when you look at the history of the deputy president, yes, there are things that have been said about him. I know one case where he was found guilty and even asked to return a property that the courts found he had taken illegally. But if I were to look at the Azimio side, I'm sure I'll be spoiled for choice to find individuals whose reputation cannot be, with the remotest exaggeration, referred to as squeaky clean. So, are we using the yardstick where we determine your cleanliness, if I may say so, by matters that have gone to court and where you've been found guilty, or issues that have been raised, say for instance, by the Auditor General and have never been responded to, or matters that the DCEI have investigated and conclusions have been arrived at, or matters that have gone to the DPP and matters have never been concluded?
Yeah.
When you talk of lustration, it was a good term. Began in the ancient Roman times.
Yes.
You are the legal mind here. I am not. I'm just a layman.
Yes.
But it referred to purification. That was the whole purpose.
Yes.
A system, it was a ritual where you remove what was unwanted and in the past and you bring in something new. So are we saying that moving forward, and given that the politicians in this country, one would have to really stretch one's imagination to refer to them as squeaky clean, that we now want to start on a new slate where we are going to use yardsticks that refers strongly to chapter 6, and if that is inadequate, add some more to it so that we actually have morality as a key issue that governs the way we work. Is that what you're saying?
You see, this is why I like to come to onto the show, because CT goes back to ancient history and pulls out the history of lustration. It's a wonderful sort of history lesson, but one with serious moral consequences. So I would say to you, CT, that Azimio is obviously a broad tent, because as you know, when you campaign for election, you are trying to get every vote. Okay. There is also something called the freedom of association. You know, people can join things and they can dissociate from things in the political arena. We know that we are dealing with what we have in this country. The last, I would say, 30, 40, 50 years have not been, a period in which the country has realized its potential. A lot of people are tainted, leaders and citizens alike. That's a fact. Okay. So on the political arena, you are not going to get people who are completely clean throughout any political structure. That is not possible. I think our running mate, MAKAU, said that when she was weighing the possibility of choosing between Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. I think she said that. And she said that there were just more thieves on the other side. And I think she was very clear about that. And she said she looked at us and she said that this other side has a possibility.
Has fewer thieves.
Has a possibility. You know, what we are trying to do is to say this. You must begin somewhere. Okay? And we've said that this country has never seen a ticket such as the one that is in front of us in Azimio at the top. I think CT, you are the historian. Okay? Okay,
I'm actually a student of history.
Okay, student of history,
I'm not a
right?
historian.
Yeah, no. Students of history can also become historians. But so you have never seen a ticket of this magnitude, and so
What magnitude are you referring to, Professor?
Can we take a break and then talk about this magnitude, because I
Okay.
think it's something that we'll need
gargantuan
to look at more.
magnitude.
Yeah, very
Gargantuan.
There's an adjective to take you through the break. Having a conversation with and asking, so the debate, why not?
This is The Situation Room the only way to start your day.
The conversation continues this morning, and we're having, I think the adjective when we went to the break was gargantuan.
Gargantuan.
Yes, Prof. And, I know Magoma has a question, it's burning, and it still remains that if it's to service of Kenyans, why not give them an opportunity to hear? And why did you arrive at this decision, or at least make the announcement, 2 days to a debate for which many parties have prepared for which many parties were ready to have you there, have the candidate there, for which they've prepared for months well in advance of time, for which you knew about as well, that you could have made these sentiments bare to them, the organizers, and to Kenyans at large, that from the very beginning, because the reasons you're giving us today are not reasons you arrive at when you've had a sleep and wake up in the morning. If it's issues of morals, those are deeply embedded in your psyche, that you believe them, that they're of your creed. So why not make this decision from the get-go, or make this announcement from the get-go? Why wait to 2 days before the debate?
I think, in fact, you make my point inadvertently. And that is that the decision not to give this individual a podium alongside Mr. Odinga was a heavy decision to make. It is not something that you take lightly. As you know, Mr. Odinga has supported debates before. In 2013 and in 2017, he supported the presidential debate, and he appeared in both. I just want to say that this is a decision that you take after careful sifting of all the facts. It's an agonizing decision to make. It's a serious one, and you do not make such decisions by shooting from the hip. Yeah, and that is why it took so long for us to make it, because we took it seriously.
Listening to you and the reasons you're giving, and you're right to want to run on the moral platform, and I think that's your choice as a party. But it might also then suggest that, could you then be saying that your running mate candidate Martha Karua then may not be sharing the same opinion? Because just last week, Martha Karua was on the same platform with the deputy running mate, or the running mate of William Ruto from the same party. So here we've got a situation where one party says that the candidate cannot share a platform with the other candidate, but the running mate did share a platform with the other running mate. Your governor candidate did share a platform with their governor candidate. What does this then say?
Let me just say this, and that's a good question. Let me say that, in a presidential election, the most consequential person in that election is the person who sits on top of the ticket, on both sides. Clearly, there are candidates up and down the line. Down ballot candidates at the MP levels, at the senatorial levels, and so on, gubernatorial candidates. Those ones have been debating. I think our running mate, Martha Karua, decided and wanted to debate Mr. Gachagua, and so she did. But what we saw in that debate, in retrospect, they say hindsight is 20/20, but in retrospect, those two people should not have been on the same platform at all. Mr. Gachagua, you saw him exercise his right of speech to spew the vilest epithets and abuses I've ever heard from a candidate. I mean, his mouth was just filthy, And, his mom should really have taken him home and washed his mouth with soap. He spent the whole time running against Mr. Kenyatta. Mr. Kenyatta was not on the ballot. At one point, he broke debate rules by taking a piece of paper from his pocket. I was wondering if he had an earpiece, in fact, in his ear, to guide him on what to say.
So is it fear of these possibilities? Is it fear of these possibilities that would happen if Raila Odinga was on the podium?
No, not at all. I think we just think that they don't take the debate seriously. They just will say anything. They will do anything, and that's what we saw with Mr. Gachagua. These people are not bounded by law or by morality. And if I was to, with hindsight, I would never have advised, the running mate, our running mate, to give that person an opportunity like that one. Yeah, it was a sad spectacle that he made of himself.
He broke the rules of that debate.
He did. Every second he was there. And if Mr. Gachagua is a liar, if Mr. Gachagua is engaging in skullduggery, you can imagine what Mr. Ruto is going to do. Because Mr. Gachagua is Ruto Jr.
I want to take this discussion back to this topic of lustration. And the reason why I'm taking it back is because one of the things that every successive government in this country has done, it isn't written in law, but it has been perceived that certain sins of the past are forgiven. Certain misdeeds are laid aside and people move on. There's ample logic to support that particular perspective. But there is a problem with that change because I recall when President Kibaki came into power, they attempted something of that sort. A minuscule, if I may use your term, okay? They call it radical surgery of the judiciary.
Yes.
Now, there are those who would argue there are some merits. There are those who would argue to the contrary. Now, you have been in the US for the longest time. You are a professor of law. In the history of America, this same principle of lustration was used in the 50s by somebody called McCarthy. What they did was then to persecute people who were perceived to be communists. A gentleman called Arthur Miller actually wrote a book on it, an allegorical narrative called The Crucible, banned in certain parts of the US because of what it suggested. Now, my fear, my apprehension, in the name of lustration, in the name of purifying, there's a likelihood that there'll be witch hunts, which is what the Crucible was all about. How do you ensure that you actually bring about change without picking on people, without using that position to pay back people and to weed out people whom you perceive as people you do not want?
I think at the risk of correcting my esteemed colleague, Siti, let me wade into those waters.
No. Correct me.
Yes. McCarthy was a despicable individual. And McCarthy was engaged in a witch hunt of individuals that he did not agree with, and especially people that he perceived to be not of his political hue. People on the left, individuals in Hollywood, and so on and so forth. He went after all those people in
considered leftists.
Yeah, exactly correct. So that was a clear political witch hunt perpetrated by one senator, who was a despicable man. Lustration is not used in that context, in my view. Lustration is used in the language of transitional justice, where you are moving from one dispensation to another, a dispensation of darkness, of dictatorship, of mass killings, of mass atrocity. And you're trying to leave that behind to establish a new platform for a new country. If you look at the Azimio platform, and also you look at the history of our two candidates, the ticket that I called gargantuan of Mr. Odinga and Ms. Karua, just look at their history. They have stood for everything that this country should become. We are not saying any human being is perfect, but we are saying that if you look at the political terrain, you cannot find any two people, not just in Kenya, but in East Africa, with a history of struggling for reform consistently, of sacrificing personally. The last time I was here, I said that Mr. Odinga was our Nelson Mandela. Okay? I don't think that anyone can stand here and call out Martha Karua for wrongdoing. Yeah. this is a ticket of virtue, as opposed to a ticket of vice on the other side. We have a campaign that pits vice against virtue. And we intend to take this country forward and take it this way. We know there are many things that are wrong. We know, for example, that the rule of law does not mean much in this country, both among the leadership and in the population. Okay, we know that the country's economy has never realized its potential. Okay, we know that there is inequity. We know there is impunity. Those are the things that we want to change. But societies don't change themselves. Okay, institutions don't change themselves. Societies are changed by people, and change begins at the top. Let me just give you an example, Ndu, and City and colleague here. Let me just say this. We have talked in this country for the longest about personal accountability and personal responsibility. We have. And I think all of you would agree that that should be the foundation of any state, that we hold ourselves to account. One device that we can use to hold ourselves to account as a country is a lifestyle audit for the leadership and for the people of this country, so that when you seek public office, you tell us on the pain of punishment what you own and how you acquired what you own, on the pain of punishment. And if you cannot account for it, first of all, you do not run for public office, and secondly, you return the loot.
Prof,
because that's what it is. So I'm just saying that we can. There are some devices that we can use to cleanse the country, to start cleansing this country, and a lifestyle audit is one of those. And I'm sure CT, you agree with that.
I hear what you're saying, Prof. But if you look at this in terms of attention and optics, is that you're talking about what needs to happen.
Yes.
But unfortunately, by not showing up and making these issues laid bare to Kenyans, because at the end of the day, the truth of the matter, whichever way we want to slice it, is that Kenyans are hungry to hear on the same platform as the other individual what it is, these things that you're saying. That we can't run away from that. But would you agree that talking about not being there inadvertently sheds light on your opponent, and Kenyans will hear what he has to say, not what you have to say?
We are not troubled by what Mr. Ruto has to say, because what Mr. Ruto has to say has no premium. It has no moral premium. If there's a truth meter, and you are to put it in the truth meter, it will hit rock bottom.
Professor, allow me to disagree with you. May I?
Please do.
Okay. Truth meter according to whom? According to the Azimio group? Truth meter according to the citizenry? We're talking about a party that actually has followers. We're talking about a party that actually has candidates who are considered credible in the places that they want to offer their candidacy. And this is amidst the very things that you are saying, if I may again borrow, despicable. Somehow people have found ways of making peace with it and moving along with it. Now, if the opportunity that Ndu is referring to is then provided where this very same thing is being presented against, and there is no other narrative to oppose it, free reign, a carte blanche, meaning say it as you wish, as when you have the flow to yourself.
Yeah.
And you're saying that the Azimio side isn't concerned about this.
At all. At all. I'm laughing all the way to the bank. I'm not concerned about this.
But this is Azimio. Are you saying that your sentiments of not being concerned mirrors the sentiments of the Mwananchi? That's a question I'm asking you, really.
You see, just to go back to what you said earlier, political parties will always have followers. Don't forget, CT, because you are the student of history here, that the Nazi party had followers.
Oh, it had many followers.
Many followers.
And that is why Hitler was able to do what he was able to do.
Yes. Many political parties that are based upon demagoguery and are led by charlatans and evil men and women have found followers in history. So it is not that is not new to us. We know that particular historical phenomenon. What we are saying is that it's our job to change the national conversation, to change the political culture. You know, we're not worried about someone getting, airtime, free airtime. Mr. Ruto might as well go and buy 2 hours of television and speak to himself. I think that the country, as I've said before, and I think you made this point yourself earlier, that we hear from these candidates every day, war to war. In fact, there are people who every time Mr. Ruto comes on television, they turn off the set because they don't want to hear anything from him.
And there are those who switch it on when they hear.
Yes,
that he's
right.
about to speak.
Prof.
That's also true. But let me tell you this before you come in. Let me tell you this. If I tell you, and you look at my face and my demeanor, and you can take my body temperature and my blood pressure, 120/80, I'm not worried. Not worried about this at all. And I think Ndu said that, common people there are yearning to hear from us versus him on the same platform. I'm not aware of such yearning. I think that some of those sentiments have been expressed by people in the press. We have explained ourselves. I would expect, in fact, individuals and Kenyans of goodwill to fully understand why we would not want to debate a person like Mr. Ruto. Let me just make one final point. Today, CT,
Yes.
this is put to you directly by me. I'm interrogating you now.
Please.
Today, if you learned that one of your core anchors on this program, this is just hypothetical, gentlemen and lady.
Yes.
Yeah, do not come at me hammer and tongs. Was a rapist, was a thief, was a child molester, would you still anchor the program with him? I bet not.
If
Personally, I would not do it.
if he was
Okay.
accused,
No. Let me just say this.
repeat what you said again, so I
I'll-
understand you. Has he been accused, or has it been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is the very things that you mentioned?
I would say that either accused, convicted, credibly implicated, and you believed yourself. Because we don't always have to wait for a court of law to tell us what's right and what's wrong. We are moral beings. We can make those decisions, right? So if I knew, although you could not be convicted because the criminal justice system has failed, because you have bought the police, you have bought the judge, you have bought the DPP, and all of those people can be bought in Kenya and are bought every day.
Hypothetically speaking, of course.
If you bought them and you are not and you're not taken to court, you can walk around here saying that you're as clean as cotton.
Again, hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically speaking, that
Yes.
is, in that case, I would be shocked, CT, knowing you, that you would sit in the same room to be a co-anchor with that person who is a criminal in your heart.
Mano has a burning question for you.
What I find interesting
CT, don't give up, man.
what I find interesting about Professor's argument and the reason for not attending the debate, when I read the letter, part of the letter was somewhat right, where they were saying that the other side has placed demands on the debate secretariat, which they were not happy with. That's because I think the other demand, the letter was in public. What I find wrong, Prof, is that on the one hand, you say you do not want to debate these people, and then you say that you will use, you'll buy airtime. Is it Jericho something?
Yes.
Jericho Hall.
No, we never said we will buy airtime.
We
never said that.
Okay.
Never
I take
said
it back.
that.
I take it
Yeah.
back.
They will be at Jericho Hall answering
Jericho Hall,
questions from Kenyans.
answering questions from Kenyans, which
And I invite all of you to come and ask questions.
which you're hoping will be televised. So wanting to split that airtime between the debate time and your time. But I feel
No. Wrong again. Let me correct you because that should not go uncorrected. We are not saying that we are going to hold our town hall at the same time with the debate.
Okay.
We have not
Okay.
made that decision.
Okay.
We
Okay.
haven't.
All right.
Okay.
All right,
That's
carry
clear
on.
now.
We might or might not.
It does not
Well,
mean
well,
they're
it
not
doesn't mean they're not going to
to.
do it.
Yes, it doesn't mean they're not going to.
Yes.
But Prof, you said that debates are things that are of recent past, that they've not been there for long, that began in the 1950s. But everybody agrees that debates in themselves are a way of entrenching democracy, particularly so in countries, in places where democracy is still growing. By denying Kenyans that opportunity to be able to hold their leaders to account and to be able to say, Raila, we've listened to you debate and we've listened to your manifesto being discussed. If and when you were to become president, these things you did not say during that time. I think, from where I sit, I think you're just running away from that opportunity.
How does debating...
Because the morality, the question of morality, let Kenyans judge. Let Kenyans themselves be the judge of whether is this moral or not.
But that's a weak argument. Let me tell you why it's a weak argument. Why
Professor, you begin to sound like Nelson Harvey.
No, I'm just saying, I'm just saying this. No,
Something happens to these lawyers when they interact with politicians.
CT, listen to me for a minute. I cannot sound like Harvey. That would be an abomination.
Oh, wow.
But let me say this.
It's that Monday morning.
He goes again.
It's that morning.
Yes.
Let me say this. How does giving a platform to a person that we believe is a tainted individual, a person who should be behind bars, a person who has been credibly accused of all kinds of economic crimes, how does debating that person entrench democracy? In fact, the contrary is true. Because what you do when you debate such a person is you sanitize them. You say that they are no more persons in the political discourse. What we are saying by not debating them is we're saying they're abnormal. We are saying we should not normalize such a person. That's what we are saying. And we are saying that those people should be taken out of the political space. This is what I was telling, CT here. Last question. Clean this country. Don't you want this country to be clean?
Oh, we do.
Everybody
we do.
does.
But be
Everybody
careful
does.
what you wish for, because the very same thing, the yardstick. Remember the example. The rapist has been found guilty. Not quite, but has a pending case. Be careful what you wish for.
What you wish for.
You have individuals in Azimio.
The
who
broom sweeps the whole floor.
Have not been convicted, but they have issues.
But public life, the standard for participating in public life and asking Kenyans to invest their trust in you should be higher than simply a legal predicate.
I agree.
Yeah, in most, like in Japan, for example, even in the
in many developed and advanced democracies, the sheer mention is adequate.
Is enough.
You leave the political stage.
Okay,
Yes.
I mean,
Why can't we do that in this country?
all right. Look, our minutes are
Do we agree
ticking
with
by,
that?
but
Do
I
we
mean,
agree with that?
It's important for us to ask this question as well.
Yes.
Over the last couple of days, the credibility, or rather, the confidence that lies in the hands of the IEBC to hold a credible election has come to light with what's happening, with what we've seen coming. We'd like to hear from you on that, because your candidate has also said something about that, and we've heard from almost the other side as well.
It's good you're asking that question. Let me say that we've always said that we obviously want a clean election, a free and fair election that is credible, that citizens in this country and people all over the world can say that was a good election. Okay, we know the history of elections in this country. They rarely go well, and they are rarely free or fair. In fact, you can count perhaps, but I can just count perhaps only 2 elections that have been free and fair: the one at independence and the one in 2002. The rest of them have been shambolic. Now, the electoral bodies, previously, the ECK, and now, of course, the IEBC, have been at the center of these problems. We've told Mr. Chebukati and the Commission that we support them to conduct a free and fair election. We believe them. But we've also said that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We trust, but we want to verify. Now, when events such as the one that happened the other day, where individuals are seen carrying,
Election materials.
formal election materials in their backpacks. I mean, CT and I might smuggle a bottle of wine or whiskey, into from a duty-free shop. But surely, how can the IEBC smuggle its own materials into the country? One can only surmise one thing: that something very nefarious is afoot. And I think Mr. Chebukati and the Commission should come out clean. to tell us why they cannot use formal processes of transporting government material, electoral material into Kenya, and why the IBC officials were not there themselves at the airport to inspect and to make sure that these... Yeah, and to receive the materials. The government of Kenya is just broke, that it has to... the IBC is just broke, that it has to smuggle election materials into the country to avoid paying taxes or customs duty.
Does it shed a bad light on the election that's coming up in 14 days? From your perspective?
No, it gives us a reason to worry, very much. And I think Mr. Chebukati, who is my friend, should come out and tell Kenyans that this is not true and explain exactly what happened instead of playing word games with the DCI.
And do you think the DCI are on the right footing in doing what they're doing?
Their job is to investigate wrongdoing and to follow the law where it would lead. I have a lot of faith in Mr. Kinoti, and I hope that he continues to do his job the way he's doing it.
Professor MUTUA, pleasure to have you here. The hope is that, they say a day in politics is 1,000 years.
Yes.
The hope is that maybe by this time tomorrow, maybe a different decision will be made.
No, not at all. We've decided on this particular case, as the Kenyans say, there's no reverse gear. But I'll say this here.
Yes.
We think we are winning this election. We are waiting for the date after the election, after the 9th of August, for Mr. Odinga to place his left hand on a holy book and to raise his right hand and take the oath of office.